I'm Corbett Wall with DV Auction, here with your feeder flash for Wednesday, July the 25th, brought to you in part by a new sponsor, Cargill Fescue EMT. Help defend your cattle against endophyte infested fescue. Having grazed cattle in part of the country that's predominantly fescue, I know how this time of year and those endophytes in that fescue can really sap the performance on your cattle. Here's a product that can help. Talk about Tuesday's trade there was no support from the board, and by board I mean these traders cannot find any reason to make this the board volatile. They were kind of counting on the cattle on feed report from last week and would have hunted down anything in there to try to make the board go one way or the other. But with those analysts, or the average of the analysts guess, absolutely nailing the cattle on feed report, there was just no which way to go. There hasn't been anything happen this week in the cash market or on the factors that affect trade to go one way or the other. It's almost like the political fake news. They try to find anything to drive the market, especially lower, but there's no reason for that. Your buyers in the country, both feeder cattle and fats, have been pretty optimistic so far this week. But they'd like to break the board if they could. It was marginally lower on Tuesday, but one good day can bring that back and be plus for the week. But just not a whole lot going on out there so far this week. But look at the board on Tuesday. August live cattle futures down 67 cents to end the day at 108.05. Seems like they're happy with a market at 108.05. That's way back from what our cash market is, and we got less than a week before we get into the spot month of August. Normally you get into August, your fall months, August, October, December, and you don't have any basis or not much of a basis, and a lot of times you have a negative basis. I remember whenever I was grading delivery fat cattle for USDA, that was one of our biggest delivery months, was August. But the board's got quite a ways to go before it gets on top of cash and would promote anything like that. Look at October live cattle down 27 cents at 110.32, but is on the upside of your spot futures contract. August feeder cattle down 50 cents at 152.75. October down 60 cents at 154.55. The fat cattle trade this week, anybody's guess what's going to happen. I've had a very few trickle in cleanup sales just in Iowa, 175 to 178. A lot of times you'll get that in Iowa, just some guys just hanging on the coattails of last week's trade and not selling their best loads of cattle there. But you look at your Fed Cattle Exchange, watch that this Wednesday morning on Fed Cattle Exchange. They've got 1,250 head on there, Kansas and Iowa cattle both. Something could happen because we've already heard of some bids out there, albeit lower, but usually you don't even hear of any call-in bids or packers snooping around, especially after a big high volume week like we had last week. But the week before was so shy of any numbers that they're probably going to sop most of those cattle up pretty fast, and they're keeping these change speeds pretty fast. They've sold a lot of out front product. It seems like your box beef cutout values have kind of bottomed out, and they're still making money on cattle that they're killing, so why wouldn't they keep doing it? But a lot of guys are bullish out there, and I had one of my friends telling me a story here early in the week about a guy on the radio that used to be up in Omaha, Nebraska and places like that, or several stations covered him, but Eddie Collins was an old radio guy, and he was always bullish, and on a good week like this he would tell the moms to keep their kids in the house and not to be playing around near the street because the packers are going to be busy out there trying to round cattle up and buy them higher. But I'm not sure we can go that far at this point this week, because you know, packer buyers don't really look at the cattle like they used to years ago. You might have a few of the old school guys that still go out early in the week and kind of drive up and down the alleys and just see what's going on, but not like they used to. and a lot of them just get a sheet faxed to them, just a feedlot sheet faxed to see how many days they've been on, what they weighed going in, and kind of what they expected. But nobody uses a fax machine anymore either, so those are all electronically sent to Packers buyers that might be interested in the cattle later on in the week. But don't be surprised if we don't hold at least steady. The only reason that it would be lower is because we had that big volume last week, and it looks like it could be at least steady this week. So let's hope for that, and it might get better. But like I said, your box beef cutout values were pretty well steady on Tuesday afternoon trade there. It looks like they may have found some bottom side support, and especially on some of those more expensive middle meat cuts, they were higher going into this early part of this week, and that's a good sign that things might have kind of bottomed out. Had a big slaughter on Monday. We're hoping to continue to keep a good slaughter going. We'll see how they finish out the week, and if they work very much on Saturday. But let's look at some of your feeder cattle markets. Your real-time index on Beef Market Central sitting at 148.43. Your latest CME, which it's not up to date. I'm not sure why it didn't come out already for Monday, but it didn't come out on Tuesday. But still, for the end of last week, sitting at 148.49, just 6 cents off of your real-time index, which is always up to date and in real time. But you think that's lagging a little bit behind, because an 800-pound steer, a good string of them will sure bring in the 50s in most places, especially a flat 800-pounder. But those run on the average and on a 7-day average, so you got to give them a little bit of leeway. But we need to be getting these cattle in the sale barns up a little bit to catch up with some of these country sales and some of these video sales that are far enough out front that they're not current. But your spot feeder cattle contract is almost 153, so it's got some room to grow on your cash sales. Look at some sales. Tuesday's kind of quiet. I've said that before. Not a lot of big sales running on Tuesday, but OKC West did have their calf sale. Had a light summertime run of just 1,500 head, and they called them unevenly steady and a light test. Ozarks Regional Stockyard in West Plains, Missouri, also a light run for them, just 2,800. They normally sell at least 3,000 or 4,000 at a sale there that a lot of you may not know about, but it'd be a sure top 10 on receipts nationwide as Ozarks Regional Stockyard. Good market there, a lot of good stretchy crossbred kind of calves there especially, and a lot of good backgrounded yearlings and some rocky type pastures. But calves were steady in West Plains, yearlings steady to $2 higher, and Dan Hill did note that the market got a little bit better on that light run, because you know, those guys are used to sitting there with plenty of cattle to work with, and as the yearlings kind of started to dwindle late in the sale, they got more aggressive trying to finish out their loads. And that's kind of what happens in the summertime in your auction markets. Where you have some good runs of cattle show up, the market can sure be higher, and in a sale that normally runs a lot of cattle, when they have a light run, it could get pretty competitive there, because the buyers are used to getting, you know, at least a little bit of commission there to kind of cover their expenses, and they'll get fairly aggressive on a light run trying to fill those loads out. But a couple of individual quotes on Tuesday. Imperial, Nebraska had a good sale there. 73 head of steers, weighed 855 pounds at 153.50. And then a big slug down in the more of the Southern Plains type of a market. Fredonia, Kansas sold 179 head of steers, weighed 843 at 149 smooth. And that's your feeder flash for Wednesday.